Welcome to the Deep Dive. Now, if you're a product leader, maybe a founder, or honestly just someone who's watched a great product idea sort of fizzle out into a messy list of features, then you'll want to stick around for this. We are diving into a stack of strategic sources today, really focusing on that essential blueprint for getting things done, the goal-based roadmap, or GBRM, as you'll often hear it called. Our mission here is to go beyond just defining it. We want to dissect the GBRM, make it genuinely actionable knowledge for you. We'll look at exactly how this kind of roadmap can force alignment between that big aspirational product vision and the day-to-day reality of engineering work, connecting the dots between business goals, what customers actually need, and what the market is demanding.
Yeah, and what's really key here, I think, is seeing the goal-based roadmap as this crucial synthesis point. It's definitely not just a project schedule. It's structured specifically to communicate and deliver measurable value, usually through iterative releases. And it doesn't matter if you're managing, say, a complex SaaS platform or maybe a hardware device with a much longer cycle. The GBRM is that connective tissue. It ensures every single stakeholder, from the CEO down to the newest developer, understands why they're building what they're building.
Okay, let's jump right into that then, because I think the first hurdle for a lot of teams is just understanding the difference between the strategy piece and the task management piece. What is the fundamental, the core distinction between a product manager's goal-based roadmap and the engineering team's backlog?
Right, good question. The difference really boils down to the audience and the strategic focus. The PM roadmap is laser focused on the why. It's a communication tool, primarily for executives, for sales, for marketing. It communicates strategic value, how this sequence of initiatives is going to drive user growth or maybe achieve a certain competitive position. The engineering backlog, well, that focuses entirely on the how. That's where you find the detailed technical implementation steps needed to actually execute those features.
Gotcha. So the roadmap sets the destination and the outcomes we're aiming for, while the backlog is more like the turn-by-turn directions for the engineers building it.
Exactly. And the key word there is goal-based. This whole strategy hinges on integrating clear goal-setting frameworks. We're often talking about things like OKRs, objectives, and key results. You set a high-level objective, and then you define specific, measurable key results to track progress and define success. Every single feature, every initiative on that roadmap has to justify its existence by clearly linking back to a specific OKR or a similar business goal.
Ah, okay. That immediately changes the conversation from just what features should we build to what strategic investment should we make. So what are those defining characteristics that make a roadmap truly goal-based? What separates it from just a list of stuff ordered by date?
Well, first, as we just said, it absolutely has to be goal-centric. Every initiative needs that clear line back to a business objective. Could be revenue, could be market share, could be user growth, whatever it is. Second, and this is so crucial, especially in fast-moving tech sectors, it needs built-in flexibility. The roadmap can't be this rigid plan set in stone. It has to be able to adapt to shifts in the market or, surprising user feedback.
Yeah, I noticed the sources really hammer on avoiding firm dates too far out.
Yeah.
That speaks to the structure needing to reflect that flexibility, right?
It does. It needs to be visual and structured in a way that signals that very flexibility. A lot of teams use that popular now, next, later format that helps organize work by priority and confidence level, and it deliberately keeps things fuzzier for the later items. It's great for managing expectations. And finally, it absolutely must be measurable. This means baking in your KPIs, key performance indicators, right from the planning stage. You need those specific targets, things like user adoption rates, maybe a target for churn reduction, or perhaps improving your net promoter score. If you can't define how you'll measure success for an item, it probably doesn't belong on a strategic roadmap.
It sounds like the format choice itself really drives the focus.
Oh, absolutely. The format dictates the focus. A PM might use a traditional feature roadmap if they need to detail specific planned enhancements. But if the strategic priority is more about high-level results, they might choose an outcome-oriented roadmap. That shifts the language away from outputs like build 5 new filters and puts the emphasis squarely on the strategic result. Increase user engagement by 20% by solving these specific user problems.
That outcome focus really pushes teams to think about the actual value they're delivering, not just the volume of features.
It really does. And another common structure, especially useful for communicating upwards, is the theme-based roadmap. Here, you group initiatives under broad strategic themes, like maybe improve user onboarding or optimize platform performance. It makes it crystal clear to leadership where the big strategic bets are being placed.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me, the strategic advantages. We get the components, but what specific value do these GBRMs bring to the table for PMs, especially when they're navigating, the internal politics and pressures?
Yes, the politics. Well, the biggest advantage, and it often is political, is strategic alignment. By forcing every single initiative to map back to a company OKR or goal, you essentially require every department, marketing, support, sales, everyone to pull in the same direction. It fosters that crucial cross-functional buy-in because you're making the trade-offs explicit and visible. If a certain VP's pet feature doesn't clearly contribute to one of the top 3 company objectives, the roadmap makes that strategic decision clear for everyone to see.
That clarity must be huge for stakeholder communication. When an executive asks, hey, why aren't we building feature X? You don't just give your opinion. You can point to the roadmap and say, look, it's based on these agreed upon strategic goals.
Precisely. And that clarity directly fuels better prioritization. You can use more objective frameworks to rank potential features based on their potential impact, the effort required, the urgency. This is absolutely fundamental for battling scope creep. Without a GBRM demanding proof of strategic impact, prioritization often just defaults to whoever shouts the loudest, right?
Right. And because these roadmaps are designed to be flexible, as you said, that naturally leads to more agility. It allows for those quicker pivots when the market shifts, or maybe an A/B test completely blows up your initial hypothesis.
Exactly. That responsiveness is key. And the sources we looked at actually cite research showing that companies using these structured, goal-aligned roadmaps significantly boost their product success rates. It makes sense they're connecting the vision directly to measurable execution. Roadmaps aren't just for keeping organized. They're really a shield against strategic distraction. Okay, so if you're actually tasked with building one of these strategic blueprints, you need to understand its anatomy. There's a clear hierarchy of elements that need to be in any functional PM roadmap.
All right, let's walk through that hierarchy. Let's make sure we're really clear on the difference between, say, the big strategic bucket and the specific thing in engineer builds.
You start right at the top with the product vision statement. This is that concise, long-term North Star. Something like, empower all small businesses with seamless, integrated e-commerce tools. That vision then gets broken down into high-level objectives. These are the big, measurable goals, often your OKRs. For example, achieve 50% market share in segment X within the next 3 years.
Okay, so if the objective is the mountaintop, what are the main trails leading up to it?
Good analogy. Those trails are the initiatives or themes. These are the broad categories of work, the major strategic investments needed to hit that objective. Think big things like mobile platform relaunch or subscription revenue optimization. An initiative isn't something you knock out in a couple of weeks. It's a major strategic push. And then finally, nested under those themes or initiatives, you have the specific deliverables, the features or epics. These are the tangible things the teams build, like implement AI-driven product recommendations or integrate a new third-party logistics API. The initiative might contain several epics. The epic is usually the level the engineering team works with.
That distinction is really important. The strategic initiative versus the more granular epic engineers consume. What else absolutely has to be in there?
You definitely need a clear but flexible timeline. Using those horizons like now, next, later, or maybe quarters is common, but always stressing the flexibility part. You also must clearly define the metrics KPIs for each objective. How will you know you succeeded? Is it a target net promoter score above 8? A specific conversion rate lift? Be specific. And lastly, never skip the risk management aspect. Clearly map out the dependencies and risks. In the connections like this feature relies heavily on the API integration being done by Q3. And also potential problems like we have exposure here if new regulations come into play. That transparency is key for managing proactively. And it requires a disciplined review cadence, usually quarterly, for strategic reviews to get feedback and iterate.
That sounds like a really solid framework. Okay, so for our listeners thinking, all right, I need to build one of these, let's walk through the steps, maybe focus a bit on where those tough strategic trade-offs actually happen.
Makes sense. It starts right at the top, just like the hierarchy we discussed. Step 1, define that vision and goals. You've got to articulate the ultimate why and then nail down those 3 to 5 key strategic goals, maybe using OKRs, maybe something else. But they absolutely must align with the overall company strategy.
Okay, and before you even think about building, you need to know the landscape. So step 2, Understand your audience and market. Really dig into user research, competitor analysis, market trends. Find those critical pain points and gaps your product needs to address.
Step 3 is about input. Gather requirements. You need to systematically collect ideas and data from customers, sure, but also from sales, support teams. Use interviews, feedback channels, usage data. This stops the roadmap from becoming just an internal wish list. Now, step 4. This is often the toughest part. Prioritize features and initiatives. This is where you absolutely need objective frameworks. Use tools like RICE-E, that's reach, impact, confidence, effort, or maybe Moscow must have, should have, could have, won't have. The step forces you to rank everything based on quantified value versus the estimated cost or effort.
All right, this feels like the step where the internal politics can really flare up. How do you handle that classic situation where effort gets confused with impact? Prioritization often means telling someone important their idea isn't top priority.
You handle it by making the scoring transparent. If you're using RICE or Moscow, show the scores. If a senior leader is pushing hard for a feature, the PM's role is to say respectfully, "Oh, I understand the push, but look, based on our agreed RICE scoring, this has a relatively low impact score compared to its effort, especially regarding our current main objective. So it's slated for next or later right now. We have to stick to prioritizing based on the shared goals." The roadmap, based on that framework, becomes the objective referee, taking some of the personal pressure off the PM.
That makes a lot of sense. Use the framework as the shield.
Yeah.
Okay, once those hard choices are made, step 5. Create the timeline and structure. Divide that prioritized work into phases now, next, later. Map out those critical dependencies you identified earlier. And crucially, as we keep saying, avoid those hard fixed dates beyond the now column. Keep that strategic agility.
Step 6 is all about measurement. Define metrics and tracking. Set those specific KPIs for success, and make sure your analytics tools are set up early so you can actually measure the impact of what you launch, iteration by iteration.
Step 7. Visualize and share it. Use clear tools. Could be specialized software like AHA or Product Board, or maybe even configured agile tools like Jira or Trello. The key is making it accessible and easy to understand for everyone.
And finally, step 8, which is ongoing. Review and refine. Treat the roadmap like a living document, not a static artifact. Actively solicit feedback and be ready to iterate on your priorities based on new data or market shifts.
Okay, let's try to make this even more concrete with a couple of examples. The sources had some good illustrations of how the goal really shapes the whole roadmap structure and timeline.
Yeah, take a typical SaaS product. Let's say the main goal is increase user retention by 30% over the next 12 months. That single goal dictates the strategic phases. Maybe Q1 is purely diagnostic research, user interviews to understand why users are leaving. Then Q2 and Q3 become dedicated development cycles, focused only on building, say, onboarding improvements or features designed to increase engagement in the first few weeks. And then Q4 is all about the launch and measure phase, maybe using A/B tests to track the impact on that core retention KPI, see how the goal shapes the entire year's focus.
Totally. But what about something less flexible, like hardware? You can't just iterate hardware weekly.
Exactly. Hardware roadmaps are inherently longer term and carry more upfront risk. So imagine a goal. Launch our next-gen smart home device, incorporating specific new sustainability features within 18 months. The phases here are much longer and more rigid. Months 1 through 6 might be entirely dedicated to prototyping, whaling down hardware specs, locking in supply chain partners, maybe dealing with early regulatory hurdles. Then, months 7 through 12 could be intensive testing beta programs, stress testing, iterating based on physical feedback. Months 13 to 18 are then focused on production ramp-up and market entry. The lack of flexibility, especially around dates for component delivery or manufacturing slots, is dictated by the physical realities and potential regulatory timelines. This makes that initial planning and dependency mapping even more critical.
These roadmaps sound incredibly powerful, but clearly they aren't easy to maintain perfectly. What are some of the common traps or pitfalls our listeners should be actively watching out for?
Oh, there are definitely common failure modes. Probably the biggest killer of a GBRM is overcommitment, just promising way too many features too quickly. The solution, as we talked about, is that strict discipline enforced by prioritization matrices like RC. If the total score of now items exceeds your team's realistic capacity, something has to move to next, no exceptions.
We also mentioned the flip side of flexibility becoming too rigid. That lack of flexibility trap where teams put hard dates on things way out in the later column.
And the antidote there is really leaning into the visual format, adopting that now, next, later structure specifically because it visually communicates to everyone that later is directional, it's uncertain, it's subject to change based on what we learn. And alongside that, you have to actively fight scope creep.
Yeah.
Those unprioritized features that somehow sneak into the current work. Mandated gate reviews before development kicks off are key here. If an item isn't on the approved roadmap for now, it doesn't get built this cycle. Period.
And if you build it but don't track whether it achieved the goal, the whole strategic effort kind of falls apart. That's the danger of ignoring metrics.
Absolutely. The solution is simple but requires discipline. Integrate your analytics tracking early and make sure those KPIs are reviewed consistently. And finally, maybe the most common issue is simply having outdated roadmaps. Teams get busy executing and forget to update the plan. You have to build in a non-negotiable review cadence. We generally recommend a quarterly rhythm for the bigger strategic reviews and updates, maybe combined with bi-weekly tactical reviews, just to adjust priorities slightly within the current now bucket.
So wrapping this up, what does this all really mean for you, the listener? Goal-based roadmaps, they're really not just more corporate paperwork. They're that critical strategic bridge. They translate abstract ideas into tangible results. They make sure your product delivers real, measurable value, especially in today's super competitive markets. They guide development, they inspire teams with a clear why, and ultimately they help you delight your users by solving the right problems.
And maybe just one final thought to leave you with, especially if you're dealing with larger, more complex products or enterprise environments. Think about incorporating scenario planning. It's a bit more advanced, but building in buffers, actively thinking through what-if scenarios. What happens if a key supplier fails? What if a major competitor launches something unexpected next quarter? How does our roadmap need to pivot? Building that kind of foresight and flexibility into your planning process is often what separates the truly high-performing product organizations from the rest. It prepares you for the inevitable bumps in the road.
That's a great point, encouraging that critical thinking about the long game and acknowledging that things rarely go exactly to plan. So don't feel overwhelmed by all this. Start small. Define your core goals first. Then try applying those 8 steps we walked through. Iterate, refine, and you'll start seeing the benefits. Thanks for diving deep with us today. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and share it, with others who might benefit too. To learn more about product management and digital marketing, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.